Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It is always a pleasure to come to the Cont Committee to present our findings. Today I understand I have two items in the agenda, first being the briefing paper on the integration of migrants. I would like again to thank you for the invitation and to start straight with the topic. The recent increase in the number of people seeking protection in the EU has brought the EU's migration policy into the spotlight. In the four-year period from 2014 to 2017, almost 3.7 million people applied for asylum for the first time in the EU, 3 times more than in previous years. Other people come to live in the EU for different reasons, to study, to join their family, or for work. Migrants, people that legally reside in the EU but do not have the nationality of an EU member state, thus make up around 4% of the EU population. Integrating these people effectively could bring a number of benefits, economic, social, and fiscal, for the countries where they settle. But for needs of different types of migrants, can be very different, and integration potentially requires action in many areas, including education, housing, employment. Therefore, integrating migrants is a challenging exercise for the EU collectively to face. Migrant integration is primarily the responsibility of member states, but the role of the EU is to provide incentives and support the member states in this field. And the briefing paper I'm presenting today to you is not an audit report, although we applied the same rigorous quality standards. The document summarizes the actions taken by the EU institutions in the field of integration, with a particular focus on the initiatives taken in response to the recent increase in their number. In addition, we provide an overview of the integration policies implemented in the member states and explore the role of the EU initiatives in shaping those policies. In doing this, we highlighted 7 key challenges for the integration of migrants. Starting with the first one, according to studies, the earlier the integration starts, the more likely it is to be successful. Member states have some discretion as to how they implement migration policy in their own countries, which might be a reason for migrants to move from the country they first arrive into another country, delaying the start of their integration. Other factors, of course, may also delay the start of the integration process, such as long waiting periods to process applications. The second challenge is the equal rights and anti-discrimination policies. Most member states are making efforts to ensure that migrants are not discriminated. However, according to a 2017 survey, the majority of Europeans have a negative feeling regarding migration of people from outside the EU. In our own survey, 4 member states reported that the attitude of the host population toward migrants has a negative impact on their integration. Funding is the third challenge we identified. There are a number of funds in the EU budget that can finance action to integrate migrants. In response to the recent increase in migration, the EU mobilized over 5 billion of additional funding, of which 115 million was specifically allocated for integration under the Asylum, Migration and Integration, so-called AMIF fund. And the amount potentially available is high, but only AMIF, which is relatively small compared to the other structural funds, records data, real data on the integration. Therefore, the total amount spent on integration by member states is not really known, nor is known the number of migrants who benefited from these funds. Nevertheless, the member states declared in the context of the midterm review of AMIF that more funds will be needed to integrate migrants. In our view, effective integration policies require a sound and a comprehensive assessment of needs and should be funded by adequate resources made available at the right time. And without a robust estimate of the funding needed at national level and an understanding of how EU funding can complement national interventions, there is a risk that these policies might be ineffective. The fourth challenge we identified flows from the Commission's Action Plan for Migrant Integration, adopted in 2016. as well as setting out steps for the Commission to take. This action plan also encourages Member States to focus their efforts on additional measures that they could take at national level. However, these latter measures will not be monitored by the Commission, which may limit its ability to provide additional support to Member States. Our fifth challenge that we saw during the analysis was that supporting all migrants across all relevant policy areas remains a challenge. Some Member States have national integration policies, some develop actions at a local or regional level, and others incorporate migrant integration in other policies. However, from our survey, we found that many Member States do not take action in relation to some groups of migrants, such as young migrants or stateless people, or in some areas of integration. In addition, the Supreme Audit Institution reports we reviewed highlighted several shortcomings in the design and implementation of Member States' integration policies. And it is important that all migrants are supported across all relevant areas. The sixth challenge we identified relates to the availability of data. EU funding does not require Member States to specifically monitor the outcomes for migrants, whether the funding actually helps them to become integrated. And about a third of the respondents to our survey reported that they did not use any indicators to monitor outcomes. In addition, the Supreme Audit Institution reports that we reviewed highlight that there is insufficient information on integration measures and a number of weaknesses in the Member State monitoring systems. Monitoring the outcomes of integration policies using reliable data would allow stakeholders to measure progress, identify limitations, and adjust policies accordingly. Conversely, the absence of proper monitoring may prevent that real needs of migrants from being addressed. And the last, but not least, seventh challenge that we identified relates to the complexity of funding arrangements. The legislation requires that Member States have coordinating mechanisms to maximize synergies and minimize overlaps. However, our survey showed that not all Member States had such mechanisms, and that only 3 had issued guidance on coordination. And the need for a strong national leadership role is particularly important given the multi-level governance structure of the funds, ranging from national and regional authorities to bodies at municipal or local level. Without effective coordination at EU and national level, there is the risk that the complexity of funding arrangements may lead to ineffective and inefficient policy implementation. And to conclude, integrating migrants in the new societies within the EU is not an easy process, particularly given the significant increase in migrants in the last decade. However, it is a task that the Union has committed itself to tackling, and effective integration has a number of potential economic, social, and fiscal benefits for the countries where migrants settle. I hope that this briefing paper will be informative and useful and will provide important elements for improving the existing and future EU legislation in this subject. Thank you very much.